Hello, everyone. Welcome to Transform Now. I'm Brad Hairston.
And I'm Michael Marchuk.
And this is our weekly pulse check, taking a look at what's hopping in the news around automation and AI. So, Michael, let's dive right in.
Let's do it.
The first article is from AutoGPT.net. And
.net, not .com, just to make sure that in case people get the wrong one.
Got to make sure we get that in there. The title is Perplexity Says It Wants to Buy TikTok. Michael, I'm sure you're excited. I know you're a huge TikTok fan.
Yes, because my account is so viral with all of the dances I do, of course.
I'm not sure I've logged into TikTok once in my entire life.
I know that I haven't.
So this article is about Perplexity, who is the AI-powered search startup. They've actually come forward and expressed a very strong interest in buying TikTok, who everyone knows has had a pretty rough time recently.
Yeah,
it was temporarily shut down by the Supreme Court. Then the Trump administration brought it back online, but the concerns continue about its Chinese ownership, its lack of visibility, about data privacy, all those things. So Perplexity has come forward as this white knight and said, hey, we want to buy it. We want to completely rebuild it, including hosting it in the US. So Michael, break it all down for us.
Yeah, so TikTok, like you said, has been a hot property for a lot of different vendors who are looking at thinking, well, this is a platform that has quite a few users with a lot of content, a lot of original content and data. So it's definitely tantalizing for any technology company who want to jump into this because of the amount of traction it already has. Mm-hmm. And Perplexity being one of the lesser of the major players in the area of AI and the LLM models, they're looking at this as a potential way of jumpstarting more of their business.
Mm-hmm.
And what I thought was interesting is a couple things. First of all, they indicate that TikTok has a market valuation somewhere between 30 and 50 billion. You just round up that 10 or 20 billion, it's somewhere in there, right? Between 30 and 50 billion dollars. And Perplexity has a market value of approximately $18 billion, and they're trying to raise more money. So there's definitely a funding issue here, and that is, if they were to step forward and leverage Perplexity as that kind of, as you mentioned, the white knight, the buyer for
mm-hmm.
TikTok, they would need some significant funding sources to be able to do that. The second thing, which I thought was probably even more interesting, was their goals.
Mm-hmm.
So they're looking at TikTok, and while everyone sees TikTok as, well, this is a black hole, we don't know how the algorithm works and how it targets people and blah, blah, blah. Their goal would be to open that all up and make it transparent and open source so everyone knows how the model works to be able to leverage that algorithm. And what makes it so interesting to me is there are already US companies, and I could name two right now that are all under the same umbrella. That's Google and YouTube, who is owned by Google.
Mm-hmm.
Who have magical algorithms that nobody understands. So this idea that we're going to come in and we're going to take TikTok's algorithm and make it transparent and whatnot is kind of interesting, because that's not what other tech companies have done. They've mm-hmm. purposely limited access to their algorithm to understand how it works and how it selects users and content so that people can't game the system, right?
Right.
So I'm wondering if this is just their idea of, more of a high-profile practical joke. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, because it's unlikely that any company in their right mind would take such a drastic step to say, we're going to open it up completely.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the idea that they would host the data in the US and all the rest of the things like that, and maybe have some, audit of the current algorithm that's in there.
Mm-hmm.
That makes perfect sense to me, is they would, maybe publicly provide an audit of the current algorithm. But to actually open it up seems a little disingenuous to me, because I don't believe that is how large tech companies leverage their IP. in general. So that's my
Right.
thoughts on this.
And clearly TikTok has gotten to a gazillion users without all that visibility. I'm not sure there's a lot of people screaming for that, but yeah, they're definitely, I think you're right. They're possibly using this as a big PR move. In fact, if you go to the Perplexity website, on their front page of their website, they have this long Magna Carta about their intention to remake TikTok, and they go into great detail. I didn't read it all, but literally that's on their homepage. So they're pretty serious about it. The article mentions that both Microsoft and Oracle are also eyeing this. So they feel some competition, and those guys have a lot more money than Perplexity. So
Agreed.
Yeah, it's probably a long shot as it is.
You mentioned Microsoft and Oracle, and all I could think, and no disrespect to Oracle, but all I could think is that Oracle buying TikTok is like oil and water from a culture perspective, from a target audience perspective, from an everything. At least Microsoft does have some consumer brand kind of awareness. Oracle doesn't. So that one to me is, while they may be interested, I'm not sure how well that fit would be for TikTok, even if they threw a whole bunch of money at it.
Well, speaking of oil and water, let's move on to our second article. I'm talking about Hollywood and AI, oil and water. So this article is from Interesting Engineering, and the title is Hollywood Unites Against AI. 400 celebs demand Trump take action on OpenAI and Google. Now, we covered an article recently about copyrighted content and fair use. And this article is referring to a new move by a bunch of Hollywood celebrities to the government, basically imploring them to take this U.S. copyright protection issue to heart. And they're very concerned about what OpenAI and Google are pushing for, which is the fair use of copyrighted material. In fact, just last week, I think we talked about Altman coming out saying, if they don't get fair use of copyrighted material, then it's over. We should just put away all of our large language models, because it's going to slow down the way that we train models, and it's just going to bring everything to a halt. So, what did you think about this request, this courteous request from Hollywood to the government on this topic?
Right. So, a couple of things. One thing that, guys, struck me was the folks who were the signatories of this particular open letter. The celebrities themselves are actors, and their performance is something that they apply to the words that are being written for them, and the director selects how they portray that image in the movies and the screens that they're on. So it's interesting that the actors would be as up in arms about this, because most of the intellectual property is not theirs anyway. They're speaking someone else's words at the direction of someone else. So I thought that was kind of interesting, that they would be the ones to be making this kind of noise. The Hollywood Writers Association already has gone through this kind of concept and come to some terms, whatever they are, with the studios related to AI and whatnot.
Right.
When it comes to the intellectual property of this, I suppose you could say this is sort of like a name, image, likeness kind of concept, where you have the actors and their potential image being used for some reason. So you could look at this as twofold. One is that they are out of touch or out of date with the way that they are looking at this. Perhaps saying, let's assume, I don't know, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. He decides that, I love this idea of AI. In fact, I would be very happy to license my name, image, likeness to AI and have them scan me up and down, voice-wise and body-wise, and put me in action films where I do amazing things, and I get royalties from that. I could be in a dozen different movies at the same time, using my caricature to be able to do that.
Right.
That's a new income stream from him that he never would have had before. Right.
Yeah.
The same thing applies for maybe voiceovers, etc. For very famous people who could take their voice and use voiceovers in a new way. You can get paid for them without necessarily doing any more work. So there are some, I think, different avenues to be able to do this. And I think perhaps folks who are, not folks, say actors who are, and I want to say this in a very polite way, getting past their prime, who have maybe dropped from the A list. Not that I follow a single little bit of this stuff, but just the idea that you have someone who may be less popular than they once were, can maybe leverage their name, image, and likeness from perhaps their youth to make movies of them in new movies where they couldn't possibly play those characters anymore. So again, I think it's a little short-sighted from that perspective. The other part that I thought was interesting was that their idea of this whole fair use concept. And the fair use of what though? It's the fair use of their image within a movie, which isn't their movie. They're an actor in it, but it's not owned by them. It's owned by the studios. So again, I get a very strange concept. It's just doesn't make any sense to me, honestly.
Yeah, agreed. There was one statement in the article that I think was interesting. It's kind of how they're positioning themselves. It says, the collective voice emphasizes that America's global AI leadership must not come at the cost of diminishing the value of its creative community. So they are definitely looking at this as a slap in the face of creativity and the arts and everything that makes up their livelihood. I just wonder about this group that is putting together U.S. AI policy. They're getting hit from everybody. Everybody, Altman has reached out to them about banning Chinese backed AI companies. Now the Hollywood's after them. A lot of people are very on edge about what the U.S. government is going to come out with in terms of their action plan for AI.
Exactly.
It's going to be interesting to see. All right. Next article is from techradar.com, and it's titled, I'm actually glad the new Siri with Apple Intelligence is delayed. And here's why we've got Apple's AI problem backwards. So the author of this article has covered Apple in the press very, very closely for a long time. So he knows how they operate, and he factors that inside knowledge into this piece. He talks about the continued delay in releasing Apple Intelligence on the iPhone, which Apple at one time was promoting pretty heavily. They had commercials about it. So what did he have to say about why this is delayed and why he thinks it's a good thing?
So his main premise was that Apple, which tends to have a history, or does have a history, of releasing products that have been extensively tested before they go out into the market space, for good reason, because the more seamless that those functions work together, the more support they can provide to their user community, and the less issues their users will have with these new features.
Right.
And certainly taking this concept of saying, well, gosh, in theory, it makes sense. I've already got Siri on my phone. It makes sense if Siri becomes much more intelligent and allows me to do things that perhaps I couldn't have done before. So I want Apple Intelligence.
Right.
The article and the author makes these comments saying, yeah, that's a great idea. However, and the however part is what we all know. And if you've been listening to our podcast for any length of time, you realize that AI, while it has all kinds of amazing new features, is still it's still baking. It's still in the oven. It's not finished yet. Yeah. And Apple has had a very good, strong track record. Even if they come out with products that the market doesn't necessarily want or can understand, they've had a really good track record of coming out with products that just work. You turn them on, they work exactly how they say they're going to work, and they just do. Again, whether or not people want them or not is a separate issue, but they just work. In this case here, they're promoting something that, first of all, isn't theirs. They're working with OpenAI to support this whole thing. So that's one part of it. And the second is they promoted a product or a feature that really didn't even exist yet when they were selling their new phone. So this was a big departure from them, for Apple, for going into a market kind of blind. And so his point was, listen, come up with features, do the right thing for the users, but make sure they work. And because that's what people expect from Apple.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure why they felt so much pressure to come out and make a big splash and really overpromise the way they did. I respect the fact that they're holding back if they don't think it's rock solid, but I for one, like you, well, you don't have an iPhone. I have an iPhone.
I'm a Pixel user, so
I have the ChatGPT app on my iPhone, which I use, and it works fine. It hasn't held me back that Siri is not, ChatGPT enabled. But yeah, they felt pressure. They felt like they needed to be in the mix and be talking about Gen AI like everybody else. And it hurt them a little bit. But yeah, I have no issue with it. I think this idea of stepping back and kind of rethinking, what really needs to be in the smartphone and who do we need to partner with and how do we need to provide this? I mean, that's a good thing in the end.
I agree.
All right. So one more article to go. This one's from TechCrunch. It's titled, "People Are Using Google's New AI Model to Remove Watermarks from Images." So again, we're getting into the whole IP topic.
Yes.
We can't get away from it. Users on social media have discovered that there's a very controversial way you can use the new Gemini AI model, which is called Gemini 2.0 Flash. And that is, they figured out they can use it to remove watermarks from images. And you think about companies like Getty Images, for example, that have their watermark on all their pictures on the web. This can be apparently eliminated or taken off pretty quickly by this Gemini product, which, by the way, is illegal. It's caught the attention of a lot of people. Other providers have explicitly refused to remove watermarks. But what do you think about this article, and where do you think Google goes from here?
I'm expecting Google will also introduce some sort of safeguards into this as well. I'm guessing this is a hack that somebody found out about and tried, and now they're publicizing it. And the folks at Google go, "Oh, we didn't even think about that, but you're right. This is an issue." This goes back, a long ways. This is, to me, the same concept of taking some kind of software and creating a key generator to be able to use it illegally. Mm-hmm. You're doing something is illegal, and you're trying to access something for free that isn't licensed for free.
Right.
So I think from a broad perspective, I think the impact is relatively low. It's unlikely you're going to have a whole swath of internet users going, "Oh my gosh, I have access that can wipe off all of these watermarks out of the Getty images I want to use on my TikTok background." Very unlikely, right? So I really think this is just something they can address quickly and easily, because I think most corporate users, anyone who's going to take this and use it in a magazine or on their website or in some other way, is really going to look at this and say, "Well, I would be licensing this because I don't want to open myself up to the legal exposure to this. Even if I could do it and get away with it, it's not worth doing that." For the same reason people license software legally is so that they get the support, and they can also support the artists, in this case here, the folks at Getty Images who are curating all this stuff, allowing it to be found, the people, photographers are taking the pictures and whatnot. So I really do think that this is just either an oversight or perhaps something that a use case that the folks at Gemini didn't necessarily consider when they did this. So I'm sure Google is going to fix this relatively quickly, but it is something that is a loophole at this moment in time.
Yeah, I agree. And the article does say that the feature is labeled as experimental and not for production use. Not that keeps people from using it in this way, but
you can steal stuff in experimental mode. Yay!
So yeah, I think all of these AI providers, I think they learn lessons like this constantly.
Right.
As a result of going fast and constantly turning things over and pushing out new versions of everything. It's just, I would imagine their legal teams have grown significantly in
No
the
doubt.
era of AI.
No doubt.
With the pace of change. But all right. Well, hey, thanks for joining us for this Pulse Check. Remember, every week we publish another podcast with an amazing guest. So be sure and check that out. And we will see you next time on the weekly Pulse Check. Bye for now.